The Subcommittee on State Foreign Operations and Related Programs will come to order. And then I hit my gavel now. I would like to welcome the Administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, Dr. Rajiv Shah, to discuss the fiscal year 2012 budget request. Today we have a delegation of members from Parliament from Indonesia, Iraq, Lebanon, and Pakistan visiting Washington. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing our hearing to be. Many of them are seated in the audience, and I also want to welcome all of them for choosing to come here. Dr. Shah, thank you for appearing today. The fiscal year 2012 request for the State Foreign Operations Bill is $59.5 billion, which is $10.7 billion, or 22% above the 2010 level. USAID administers a large portion of the funding in the bill, key programs like global health, economic growth, democracy and governance, and disaster assistance. Last week, I led a delegation of members from this subcommittee and the Defense Subcommittee to Colombia, Panama, Guatemala, and Mexico. We saw firsthand the positive impact programs like these can make to transform countries. Your staff in the field are truly dedicated, and I thank them for their service. While I understand the value of many of these important programs, the funding requested for next year is truly unrealistic in today's budget environment. Although the administration characterizes this request as a lean budget, the truth remains that an increase of almost $10 billion is a significant amount for American taxpayers. As we all know too well, the federal government's debt has grown enormously. With debt at historic levels, the Congress must demonstrate an immediate commitment to restrain federal spending. As this subcommittee works together to make difficult funding decisions, I'll ask members to look first at programs that support our highest priority national security needs. We must make a conscious effort to identify what is most important and meet those requirements within our subcommittee allocation. We simply cannot fund everything that has been funded in the past, and we certainly cannot continue to fund programs that are duplicative and wasteful. A large portion of the USAID request directly supports our national security, including programs for the frontline states in the Middle East. I will have a number of questions about these activities today. There are other requests that will require more discussion. Specifically, I hope you'll address the large request for global health, food security, and climate change. We need to better understand what has been achieved, what is planned, and what efficiencies can be identified so that the subcommittee can prioritize these requests accordingly. The subcommittee also needs to hear more about USAID's staffing surge, the Development Leadership Initiative. I understand the goal is to increase the agency's in-house staff so that they can better manage contracts and monitor and evaluate projects. However, doubling the number of Foreign Service officers, an increase of 1,200 employees above fiscal year 2008, is extremely ambitious. With this country facing such a dire fiscal situation, we need to know if this global staffing surge should remain a priority. We'd also like to hear more about your efforts to reform the agency through the initiative you began last year called USAID Forward. While the goals you have laid out are important, this proposal is expensive. We need to understand why it takes more money just to conduct business a little differently. Dr. Shah, I hope you will address all of these themes in your testimony and during questions, and I look forward to hearing from you today. Let me close by reiterating that I want the subcommittee to work closely with you to craft a bill that funds the highest priority programs that support our national security. But at the same time, we must focus on slowing the rapid growth of some programs, eliminating duplicative programs and personnel, and increasing oversight and transparency. I know that working together we can achieve these goals. I'll now turn to the ranking member, Mrs. Lowy. Thank you for quoting General Petraeus, and he was very strong in his statements when he was here before our time off, saying how important the work that we do in state foreign operations is to the work he's doing in defense. I think everyone on this subcommittee understands that. I will, you have your exhibit there that's less than 1% of the budget. I remind you it is 5% of the discretionary spending, so that's the figure that we're working on. I want to ask you, start in with the questions and you talked about how you're approaching this. I'm going to bring up something we've talked about before, and that's direct assistance. We've talked about this at previous hearings. I continue to be concerned about it. As part of your procurement reform initiative, your goal is to reach a level of 20% direct assistance in many countries by 2015. And for Afghanistan and Pakistan, a 50% goal remains in place. I continue to be concerned about this because of the lack of institutional infrastructure in some of the countries and the continuing reports of corruption in countries. My question is how they'll handle this direct assistance. It raises a number of questions, particularly at a time when foreign assistance is under such intense scrutiny. So tell me what specific measures USAID will take before providing direct assistance and throughout the life of that program.
Thank you. I appreciate that opportunity to do so. Our procurement reform overall is designed to allow us to work with a broader range of partners and to more efficiently deliver development assistance resources to projects and programs without losing as much to middle institutions along the way. The purpose of our procurement reform, especially as it relates to direct assistance and to investments in local institutions, whether they are parts of governments or not, is to help build local capacity so that we have an exit strategy over time and we can step away from our assistance, as we have in a number of Latin American countries with key long-term support for institutions that have become vibrant and self-sustaining, and including many of the countries that the recent delegation visited. I do believe the goal in Afghanistan and Pakistan of reaching 50% direct assistance is appropriate and can be implemented in a manner that ensures accountability. In Afghanistan, much of that assistance is provided through the Afghan Reconstruction Trust Fund. It's a program that is designed with the World Bank and many other partners. One of the major targets of resource use coming out of that are both infrastructure targets, but also the National Solidarity Program, which recently received a very strong validation from an independently conducted review by a United States university team that showed that it generates real outcomes on the ground efficiently. In the process of doing that, we are able to track and hold our partners in the Afghan government accountable for that. We're able to monitor the flow of resources from that trust fund through to those programs and the beneficiaries using the same process we would use with any other independent contract partner. And we do not alleviate or lessen our controls and our accountability. In fact, we provide a greater degree of accountability. In Afghanistan, that particular project is subject to our new Accountable Assistance for Afghanistan, or A-cubed effort that intensifies program design, has more site visits and project officers visiting programs, requires reporting back to Washington on what percentage of dollars are reaching beneficiaries and how a dollar actually gets consumed in the process of providing assistance, and monitors more regularly independent audits of those projects and of those programs. Similarly, in Pakistan, we've been able to achieve already about 47% direct assistance. But again, we're not doing that by writing checks in a blank way to the Pakistani government, by no means. We establish project control units. We still provide assistance specific to specific projects and programs that allow us to track how a dollar we're spending in that mechanism is used to buy vaccines or train midwives, and then report on the flow of funds in that context. So in both of those examples, and in so many other parts of the world where we're taking this approach, we're intensifying our oversight, and the goal is not to reduce the quality of our accountability, but rather to build the capacity in institutions so we have an exit strategy for our assistance over time.
And I certainly understand it in countries, some of which we did visit, and that works, but they have a more mature infrastructure. When you talked about audits, my understanding is that you plan to contract out some of the assessments using local audit firms, but your own Inspector General has raised concerns about the credibility of local audit firms in Pakistan. How will you make sure that those reviews are legitimate?
So all of our auditing are done through validated audit firms. We have looked very carefully, especially in Pakistan, at U.S. firms that have local affiliates, and it will not be enough for us to just have a PricewaterhouseCoopers or Deloitte or some U.S. name on a firm. We will assess each team individually to make sure that they're capable of conducting the audits. I'd also say with respect to Afghanistan and Pakistan in particular, we are intensifying as part of our A-cubed effort mandatory data reporting so that we have access to a broader range of data, and we are not subject, as we have been in the past in conflict and war zones, to confidentiality agreements that limit the data that come into our auditors. And we're correcting and improving our accountability on that specifically.
Would you please give us the accountability measures in Afghanistan, just for the record? You called it A-cubed, and if you give that to us for the record.
Yes.
Mrs. Lowy.